Hey everyone, it's Mike Huber, founder and CEO of the Freshman Foundation. Every high school athlete gets excited about finally arriving on campus. Becoming a collegiate athlete is the ultimate reward for all the sacrifices you've made for 10 plus years to get to this point. However, ask any athlete what it was like to make the leap to collegiate athletics, and they will tell you it is hard, and not only on the field. In private moments, high school student athletes might ask themselves, am I truly ready to make the leap to college? The parents might ask, is my child truly ready to handle life on their own in college? It is absolutely normal to ask these questions. However, that doesn't make you feel any better if you don't have the answers. What if you had a playbook to help you answer these questions before you arrive on campus? The Freshman Foundation Digital Playbook helps high school athletes be ready to dominate the leap to collegiate athletics. The Freshman Foundation is an interactive digital resource to help you prepare to answer the hard questions before you get to college. Your investment in the Freshman Foundation Playbook will help you avoid giving away your first year of college and will help your parents avoid losing sleep at night. Visit michaelvhuber.com/course to learn how you can be ready to dominate the leap to collegiate athletics. Now let's get on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Freshman Foundation Podcast, helping you make the jump from high school athletics to the collegiate level and beyond, with your host, Michael Huber.
Hey everyone, it's Mike Huber, and this is the Freshman Foundation Podcast, episode 75. If you've ever listened to the podcast or you've been following it since we started it up a few years ago, you know that most of my episodes are with guests. So when I started the podcast, I really was focused on asking individuals who I thought would be valuable sources of information to come onto the podcast and really pick their brains about, some of the things that they've experienced or they know to help the audience. And so I've done a handful of solo podcasts, but I'm really trying to shift in that direction. I've kind of hit a lull over the last 6 months or so, and I really wanted to pick back up. And I think the easiest way to do that is to just go ahead and do some solo episodes here. So today I wanted to really talk about, let's call it off-season training. So not that there's really an off-season anymore for young athletes, but really specifically talking about summer being out of school. Every sport looks a little bit different. Baseball and basketball and soccer, softball, all sports are a little bit different in the summertime. But by and large, the summertime is probably the one time of year where an athlete can focus on their own personal development, work on getting better. And specifically, I wanted to talk about planning the off season. And so I think there are 3 things I want to kind of get across here in the next 15 or 20 minutes, hopefully. One is it's okay to spend your summer however you want, right? I think, we all want what we want, right? And if we want to spend the next 2.5 months having a good time, relaxing, resting, hanging out with our friends, like at least from where I sit, it's cool. Like I'm not going to tell you you can't do that. I'm not going to tell you you need to grind out your summer, but you also have to understand that there's a consequence to that action, right? So if you're not training, if you're not working on your development, if you're not focusing on getting better, you're probably not. And there's a consequence to that. And so when you show back up in September or whenever your next, season starts, if you're not working on getting better, you might be falling behind. So I think, from a motivational standpoint, it's, hey, what do I want to do with this next 2.5 months and prioritize and decide what's the most important thing for me, but am I going to be willing to live with the consequences of those choices? So I think that's one. And actually 2 is the second takeaway is that, living with the consequences. Third, right? Like the third thing I would want to get across is if you're focused on development this summer, if you're working on getting better as an athlete in your sport, I think the mental piece of it has to be included specifically, right? Part of that is planning your summer, right? Planning out what you want to accomplish, setting some goals in the right way. And we'll talk about that. but also adding in some skills that are going to be valuable so that your mental game gets better. So when you show up in the fall or the winter, you're ready to go. So from there, I think the first question we ask ourselves is like, what do we want to get out of this summer, right? A lot of athletes like, hey, what do I want to get out of it? And I think sometimes that question doesn't even get asked, to be honest, right? Especially if you're, say, a baseball player, for example. There's a lot of tournaments, there's a lot of showcases. I think by virtue of just showing up to those and playing in those tournaments or showcases, I think my sense is that athletes might feel like that's enough, right? I'm just playing, which, okay, it may be true, right? Like, to be fair, but at the same time, it's like, is that going to be good enough to get better, right? Am I training on my own? Am I lifting? Am I doing all the little things in between the games, right? Am I getting my body better? Am I getting my mind better? Am I working on certain skills that maybe I'm deficient on, or are things that I want to get actually even better at, strengths that I have? So, what are some of the things that an athlete might want to get out of their summer experience? One is they want to perform well, right? For a lot of sports, recruiting happens in summer because college coaches are out of season. So they're out at showcases and tournaments looking at players. So you want to play well and you want to perform well. Well, with that is pressure. So whether it's physical or mental, we've got to be prepared for that, right? So we want to be able to go into those situations ready to perform, right? They want to get exposure. They want to get recruited, right? And so even if you perform well, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get noticed. But if you perform well, it's definitely going to increase the likelihood of that. Well, how do I get exposed or how do I get noticed, right? I go to a tournament. What do I need to do? Well, I need to perform well on the field, but what am I doing off the field? Or how am I carrying myself on the field, right? The body language, the communication, the teamwork, all those intangible things that may not be measurable on the field in terms of goals and hits and baskets, etc. But if a coach watches me closely, can he see that I am a player that gives great effort, is greatly engaged, is doing all the things that I can do that I can control to get noticed and go out and play well. And finally, players want to get better. What does that mean? Well, we have to assess where we're at in order to get better. We have to look at ourselves objectively to understand where we need to get better and what we need to do to get better. So that's what we'll talk a little bit more about. Two, what's a problem we're trying to solve, right? What is an area where we're trying to get better? Maybe we're, trying to be better at managing nerves. We're trying to get better at the mental game, right? Maybe we're trying to get stronger. I know a lot of athletes are working on their body. They're working on putting on more lean muscle. They're working on their mobility. They're working on arm strength if you're a pitcher in baseball, right? But they're working on their body, right? But what are we trying to solve for here? Having a priority you could try to do everything. You could try to get better at everything. That's not to say you shouldn't try, but I think focusing on one or two things that are really of the highest order is going to make your energy, your time much more focused, much more efficient, and you're going to get a much more optimal result, right? Who's going to take you through it? Obviously, you have coaches, you have travel coaches, you have private instructors in some cases. You've got parents, right? Parents are maybe giving you the advice. They're taking you to the games. They're giving you feedback, holding you to account. Obviously, there's a limit to that relationship, or maybe not so obviously, but in some cases, there's a limit to that relationship because of the emotional nature of it, right? So you have a coach who's maybe a little bit more objective. You get a parent who's maybe a little bit more or less objective, more subjective. There's more of an emotional tie. And then bringing in somebody like a mental performance coach or somebody who is even more objective to look at things from an outside point of view, to hold you to account and to give you feedback, both good and bad, to help you get better, really with that purpose in mind. So I think having a guide to go through that is really important. What's the plan, right? Okay, now you're kind of understanding like what you want to get out of the summer, right? What do I want to get better at? How am I going to do it now, right? What's my plan, right? So I think one, right, having a plan, an execution plan, a strategy, some tactics that work for you, right? Everybody has different schedules. Everybody has different demands. They have obligations, right? Setting up a plan that works for you, right? Maybe the best place to start there is by reflecting on the last season or the last 12 months. Like, hey, what did I do in the last 6 to 12 months that worked? What did I do in the last 6 to 12 months that didn't work? What do I want to keep? What do I want to get rid of? Right. And now I'm going, okay, like this is what I want to do for the next 2.5, 3 months, because this is my goal to get better. Right. And a way to do that is setting goals, which I'm sure a lot of athletes do, but setting properly structured goals is a big part of it, right? So what do I mean by properly structured? There's a lot of frameworks for setting goals, at least from a sports psychology perspective, right? You may have heard of SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, adjustable, realistic, time-bound, right? Just a framework, right? And I think the most important part of these is having specific and measurable goals, right? Telling yourself that you want to get better is not maybe going to be sufficient, because one, we have to decide how we're going to measure better, right? And two, we want it to be specific enough that we can actually aim for a small target rather than just be like, hey, I want to get generally better, right? Then we look at the different layers of goals, right? So another way to look at it is we have something called an outcome goal, which is, I want to be a starter on my team in the fall. Well, an outcome goal is something that's not really in your control, right? Ultimately, a coach decides whether or not you start, come off the bench, make a team, whatever, right? Now, you can influence that through your performance, but ultimately it's subjective and totally up to the coach, right? So, like, that's something that if you're only focused on that and you're not focused on the things you can control to get there, to optimize or maximize the chances of reaching that outcome goal, you could get really frustrated. Or you may lose your direction. You may lose your focus because you're only thinking about the result that could come in 3 to 6 months. You want to focus on what can I do today to get better, right? And so underneath, if you think about a pyramid, right, you've got outcome goal at the top. Underneath the outcome goal, you've got a performance goal. What's a performance goal? A performance goal is a goal that's partially in your control, right? So I want my batting average to be, go from 300 to 400, right? I hit 300 in the spring. I want to hit 400 in the summer. There is a self-referenced goal of, I want to go from one level to another. I want to improve relative to myself, right? Is it guaranteed? Or do you have full control over the fact that you can hit 400? No, there's going to be some bad luck. There's going to be some outs. There's going to be some bad games, right? But if I do all the things that I know I need to do successfully to hit 400, I'm going to increase the chances of that happening, right? So underneath that, the bottom layer of the pyramid, right, the widest layer of the pyramid is our process goals. Process goals are the things that we do every single day or every week that are completely in our control, that are going to give us the best chance to improve our performance relative to ourselves, and they're going to give us the best chance to reach our outcome goal, right? And so things like I'm lifting 4 times a week, I'm eating clean 6 days a week, I'm doing mobility every day, I'm meditating every day, I'm hitting in the cage 3 times a week, I'm doing this, I'm working on my fitness, all these things, right? Those are things that we can control. And if we have an execution plan every single day, every single week, and we stick to that, the likelihood, it's not guaranteed, but the likelihood that we're going to reach those higher level goals that are more out of our control goes up, right? So now we've got this multi-layered plan where we can not only judge ourselves based on an outcome that's not in our control, but we can judge ourselves based on what we're doing every single day, right? Trust your preparation, trust your work. You might have heard that from a coach or a parent or, from a teammate even. And that's what we're talking about here. Trust your work. The more work you put in consistently, the more likely it is you're going to get the outcome that you want on the back end. And so in terms of building that plan, what I would say is bringing in, right, incorporating a new mental skill, right? In my case, I usually advocate for something like meditation. Like you have a little bit more time during the summer, right? You're not as busy getting up for school and et cetera, et cetera. You can take 5 or 7 or 10 minutes to meditate every single day, to try it, to incorporate it, to see how it works for you. You can incorporate some form of, journaling, whether it's a prompted journal, meaning you find a journal with some questions that's going to help you keep on track every day, or you have a kind of a more free-form journal where you write down your thoughts and your feelings on a piece of paper. But that's a good habit to have every single day to build into that plan, right? I mean, you could also work on things like improving your self-talk, building an imagery practice, all sorts of different stuff. But putting in a new mental skill during the summer is actually like putting in a new skill on the field in the summer, right? You got a little bit more leeway, you got a little bit more time to work on it. And it's a really good time to build that new skill when you're not in a stressful situation trying to compete. So maybe adding in a mental component to your summer plan. So how are you going to make sure that you're giving yourself the best chance to succeed and execute that plan? I think having someone to hold you accountable is really important. I've mentioned that word already. Have an accountability partner, find a friend, a teammate, a sibling, someone on the outside, a coach, someone who's going to hold you to account, right? This summer, right? For whatever your plan is to get better. Because if you don't do that, it might be easier to stray depending on your motivation level, depending on the number of distractions you have. Am I committed to working out 6 days a week when the weather's beautiful and I want to go to the beach, or when I could work a couple extra days to make money, or, whatever, right? So like being accountable to yourself and have somebody holding you accountable is really important. Now is a really good time to look into mental performance coaching. I would say that the vast majority of my clients come to me in season when they're stressed, something's going wrong, they want to fix a problem, they need someone to talk to because things aren't going the way they want them to. But actually in the off season, in the summer, or when you're not in the thick of a stressful, season competition with school on top of it, now is a great time to add something new into the process to get the feel for it and try to learn while you have a little bit more breathing room. Some people don't always feel that urgency because everything's maybe a little bit easier going in the summer. That's fine. Just a suggestion, right? If you want to get an introduction to that or really get a sense of how to lay out this off-season plan, you can go to my website, michaelvhuber.com. You can download your off-season mental performance coaching guide that I have on my homepage, or you can just shoot me a message and I'm happy to talk to you about it, whenever you want. So ultimately, what do you want to get out of it, right? And again, that's a very personal, individualized question. Everybody has their own plan. Everybody has their own goals. Everybody wants to get something different out of the summer. And I completely respect that. And I think it's really important that you're able to formulate that answer for yourself, right? Rather than having somebody tell you, this is what you need to do. Because anytime somebody tells us what we need to do, unless that person is absolutely 100% trusted by the person being told what to do, there's going to be an element of resentment potentially where we just say, hey, I know what I need to do. Stop telling me what to do. It's like with school. If a parent tells you what to do, go do your homework every single day, you're going to get sick of hearing it. But if you decide this is really important, I want to get a good grade, you're going to go do it, right? So, but ultimately, here's some things that, the summer is for. Learn, right? Acquire new knowledge, right? Get smarter, get better, right? Practice more, practice new things, take some risks, try some new things. Use your time wisely, right? Don't let the summer get away from you if you really want to use it to the best of your advantage to try to get better before you go back to school in September or August or wherever, depending on where you live, right? You might want to play well, right, this summer and under control. What do I mean by that? I just mean hey, you're going to go out there in some of these showcases and tournaments and you might get ahead of yourself. You might get a little anxious. You might speed up a little bit. Hey, I want to be able to play under control and not let the magnifying glass or that what I perceive to be that pressure get on top of me, right? And ultimately, I want to get noticed. And yeah, if I perform well, that's going to help me get noticed, but also doing those little things, right? The body language, the hustle, teamwork, respectfulness. When you talk to somebody or coach comes to your game, shake their hand, look them in the eye, right? Do those little things to say, hey, this is a player I'd want to have in my program because they're coachable, because they're respectful, because they do the little things, right? Everybody knows you might have a bad game because everybody who's in this process probably has played sport. They understand you go through bad stretches. They want to see you perform, yes, but if you have a track record of performance, the performance on the field in a showcase or a tournament may not be as important as how you carry yourself, rather than throwing a bat or throwing a helmet or, getting a stupid foul or calling attention to yourself and acting out. How do I stay composed? How do I stay poised? How do I stay positive when things aren't going my way? That's a great way to get noticed because that's going to make you stand out potentially. And then ultimately, right, we want to be better than we were at the start. And so there may be a lot of different transformations that you'd want to see happen over the course of 2.5 or 3 months. But ultimately, like for me, I think one great one is being mentally prepared for anything that comes your way because so much is out of your control, right? Ultimately, being resilient, being able to deal with adversity, being able to stay calm under pressure, be able to stay poised when things aren't working. Like that's a great goal to aspire to, a transformation, because a lot of athletes aren't able to do that. That's just my experience. A lot of young athletes feel the pressure and maybe they don't act it out on a field, but they internalize it, which in turn affects their performance. The ability to stay present and really be ready for anything that comes and not let yourself get bogged down by the past or the future is not an easy thing to do. And I think it takes a lot of practice. So I think, again, the 3 takeaways for this episode, for getting ready for the summer and trying to plan are: 1, it's okay to do whatever you want, right? But there's a consequence that comes with it, right? So, hey, use your summer however you see fit. It's yours. Try to get the most out of it, whatever that means to you. Just understand, too, there are consequences to that, right? If I'm not using as much time to train and train my body, train my mind, train my skills, train my sport, then I may look back and regret that I didn't use the summer in a different way. And then finally, right, if you're focused on your individual development and getting better this summer, I would suggest including some sort of mental, skill or component into that summer training, like a meditation or a journaling, or whatever it is that works for you. So that's all I got. Hopefully this was helpful. You can always reach out to me. You can reach out to me through my website, michaelvhuber.com, or you can email me directly at michael@ftbcoaching, Frank, Tom, Bob coaching. And I would love to talk, anytime. I love to talk about this stuff and I love to help. So I hope you have a great summer and we'll see you soon.
Mike Huber is the founder and owner of Follow the Ball Coaching, located in Fairhaven, New Jersey. He is a mental performance coach and business advisor dedicated to serving athletes just like you reach their full potential on and off the court. The Freshman Foundation is all about helping you get to the next level. For more information, follow along on Instagram at the Freshman Foundation. Please subscribe, give us a like on iTunes, Spotify, leave a review, tell a friend. Most importantly, come back in 2 weeks, ready to get better.